Hi, Jeanette. Thank you so much for coming on Thrival Nutrition Podcast. How are you?
Good. How are you? Thank you for having me, Lahana.
Yes, thank you for being here. Thank you for what you do. I love this because, I'm always looking for different topics to cover. 'Cause a lot of my listeners are moms and women. And when I saw this, I'm like, oh my gosh, I've yet to cover it. But this is a problem for a lot of us, being a hot-tempered parent. So before we get started, why don't you share with us who you are and what you do?
Absolutely. My name is Jeanette Hargreaves, and I'm a life coach, and I specialize in helping moms who lose their temper. I grew up with a dad who lost his temper, and I lost my temper too. And when I had kids, it got worse. And I didn't want to pass that cycle on down to them. And so I got help, and now I help others.
That's awesome. Yeah, I would love to hear a little bit about your background because one of the first questions that I have for you is how our past influences us. And I feel like I love the doggy in the back for people that are listening but not seeing it on video. There's a little cute doggy. I see this with a lot of things, right, in our past, whether it's diet or whatever it is, what we grew up with, grows to who we are. And I know that a lot of moms struggle with this being, losing our temper and, especially in the first year, so many emotions, sleep deprived, I mean, you name it. So as you kind of share your story, I would love to hear your, experience along with what you see in practice of how our past experiences, how our parents, if they were a yeller, where does that leave us?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and not only was my dad a yeller, but his dad was also a yeller. So it was a pattern in my family. And when you have a family like that, it's a stressed out family. And so I became a stressed out kid and a stressed out adult. And actually, I even picked a highly stressful career for my first career. I was a news producer, y'all, a news producer. So for 9 years, I worked in a highly stressful environment. And not only that, my job was to stress people out because back then that's how you got people to watch the news I remember this one time we were just going to tell a story about how Austin city water had been evaluated and it was fine. But our catchphrase to get people to tune in was, is your tap water poisoned? Okay, because people, at least back then, weren't going to tune in if we were just going to say, hey, we evaluated the tap water and it's fine. You want to hear more about it, tune in at 10.
Yes.
So, yeah. So not only did I pick a highly stressful or did I come from a stressed out family, but then I surrounded myself with stressed out friends. I surrounded myself with stressed out coworkers in a very stressful environment. And that's really how your past can affect who you become as an adult. And so really learning to overcome this habit, which this is the main way that I tell people that they can overcome this yelling thing, is to look at it as a habit. But it really is a holistic approach because this habit is something that we've been familiar with since we were little. And sometimes people say, well, or they get to this point where they say, well, what is life going to look like if I don't have this habit in my life? Or maybe they've even not been aware that they didn't have to be that way. I'll shake hands with someone at a business meeting and sometimes they'll say, oh, everyone loses their temper. And that's someone who maybe has never been exposed to a person who does not lose their temper or who does not enable the hot temper habit.
Yes, it's so funny that you say that. So I'm sure that when you say what you do, people, I don't know, they comment on oh, you do this. It's so funny because when people know that I'm a nutritionist, literally it's like I'm a priest and people are confessing their sins to me of I eat this and this, or I don't do this. I always giggle because I'm oh my gosh, this is hilarious. So I'm sure you get the same thing of a person's just opinion on whether being hot-tempered is normal or different or awesome or not awesome, whichever. So it's funny.
Absolutely. Yeah. Often I'll get an outpouring of, oh, my mom used to lose her temper. Or they'll kind of bite their lip and they'll say, oh my gosh, I lose my temper. And sometimes they feel really naked, they feel exposed. And I try to be really loving to folks in that moment. And one of the ways I do that is I say, I used to lose my temper terribly. I threw banana bread one time, to let them know that it's okay, and I'm gonna love them even if they're a yeller. It's all good. It's okay.
Yes, I'm a lover for people that don't eat good. I'll eventually have you transition over, but I still love you. I don't know judgment, because we've all been there. And I think a lot of moms, we don't want to admit that we're hot-tempered because we know I feel like most people know we shouldn't be, especially with kids and young kids, because they're young and they aren't doing something that's mischievous. It's just them exploring. And I mean, there's so many things, but I know that we feel guilty when we lose control. And I wasn't a massive yeller. I never did it all the time, but I definitely have done it. And all the time I look back, I'm like, oh, I wish I would have dealt with that better, but emotions were running high. It was in the moment. And so I think we're all guilty of that, even if we don't want to admit it to ourselves.
Absolutely. Well, and for a long time, I blamed my stress on my dad. Even as an adult, I blamed him. And when I had kids, I blamed my kids. And I said, you know what? It's not me. It's my kids. They're making me angry. My children are making me angry. My dad is making me angry. And it's a really hard place to be. And I have a lot of compassion because I've been there, but you feel like a victim. Yeah. And there is a time in growth when I'm working with people where they have this switch and they realize, oh, wait a minute, I'm an adult now and I don't have to blame my parents anymore. I can have compassion for them and see them holistically as, my dad was not treated well as a child either. So I have compassion on him. And I can learn that actually, if I can control myself and honor my own feelings, then I can teach my children to do that as well. And guess what? Then they're not going to make me angry anymore. In fact, I'll sort of have control of my own buttons.
Yes, totally. And I think too, again, that's like breaking the cycle. That's really great, because I don't think any of us want our kids to grow up and be hot-tempered, and I wouldn't want them to treat their wife like that, or their husband, or their kids like that. And so I always say, with anything, that action speaks so much louder than any lessons that they can be taught, whether it's in school or church, or wherever they go, or even at home. But they see what we talk, how we talk, and what we do and things like that. It's just, I don't know, it makes so much more of an impact.
That's right. And not only
a yeller.
That's right. And not only that, what you said is so true, because if you can teach this lesson on how to be self-regulated, on how to be emotionally intelligent, it can help your child's brain to be healthier, because when you're stressed out, your body's in the stress response and your brain just doesn't work as well. So if you can maintain your regulation and honor your feelings in healthy ways, all the feelings, happiness, anger, sadness, this isn't about not being angry anymore. This is about learning how to be angry in a different, healthy way that's helpful instead of hurtful. And when you do that, your thought processes are more in the frontal lobe of the brain, and you can learn things more easily. I know for myself, my memory has gotten so much better. My ability to learn has gotten so much better since breaking this sort of stress habit.
Yeah, definitely. So explain to us what your average client is like. How do you know, I guess, what are the symptoms of being a hot-tempered parent? Because I think some of us will probably still be in denial of oh, I'm not like hot tempered, you know? So I think sometimes having just like a Google, when you Google like symptoms, what it is, it kind of will help bring like, oh, maybe I am, maybe I do need to like, you know, hire you or just do more research or start implementing these things, because I don't think any of us want to be, but I think it's really easy to be in denial.
Absolutely. Yeah. And one of the ways I see it is that we all have different levels of awareness. And so the very first level of awareness would say something like, my kids are just jerks. And, you know, I am not necessarily the coach for that person, but there is a coach out there for the person at that level of awareness. The coach usually says, I can teach your kids how to listen to you better. Something like that. My clients, they've come to the point where they're like yelling and they're like, wait a minute, should I be doing this, or is this helpful? Part of themselves is beginning to see this pattern in their family, and then see, like, they'll be like, wait a minute, my dad yelled, my children are yelling, I'm yelling, can I do something about this?
Yes.
You know, and that's really where my client is they're at this point where they're just coming into awareness that maybe there's something they can do to stop yelling, and I can teach them how. One of the big challenges, like I said, is that if you're raised, that's another thing about my clients, is that they're usually raised by a yeller. And I want to say that it's not just the yeller's fault. So they're raised by a yeller and an enabler. So you probably have a yeller in the family, and then you have someone who was complacent, who didn't say anything, who didn't say, hey now, that's hurtful. And actually my husband was an enabler. He actually saw what I was doing as a form of discipline. And so when I stopped yelling, he started yelling because he was like, well, how are we going to discipline the kids now? What does discipline look like? Because he was raised by a stressed out family too. So I can teach people and give them this vision on what it's going to look like now. If you're not going to be a family that has rewards and consequences and punishment and this really harsh form of discipline that we were raised with, well, what is our family going to look like? I can help them through that transition and teach them very simple, practical tools on getting through that point.
So when you say like you were a yeller, where do you feel like most of your yelling was at? Was it because the kids were doing something wrong and you yelled, or what was your experience with it?
Well, all of that is actually part of awareness building. And at the beginning, I will tell you, I wasn't aware of any of what I'm about to tell you. So over time, what I realized, and I realized this through getting help, primarily through counseling and coaching, was that one of my big buttons was that I was feeling ignored. And so whenever I felt ignored, which was a lifelong thing, I felt ignored by my parents too, it would bring up this rage in me, and I wanted to be noticed. And so once I was able to identify that button, it kind of released it. I didn't have to have that button anymore. And I could just say, oh, you know what? They're not necessarily ignoring me. They're just on their own train. You know, they're on their own journey, and I can be comfortable with who I am and not have to sort of demand attention by yelling. Something else that I came into awareness about was the physical aspect of yelling. Yelling is a habit, and it's a habit in more than one way. It's a lot like smoking cigarettes. So how is smoking cigarettes a habit, Lahana? Let's have a conversation about this. What makes the habit difficult to break?
I think I see people in a rhythm. So like if they have a cigarette in the morning, it's just that habit of their, what's the word? I guess it's just
It's the routine.
Yes, the routine of smoking. And then there is the emotional component of smoking. So the stress, people smoke. I guess technically like a cigarette after eating would be like a routine thing. And then also like the physical. Some people are afraid once they've smoked for so long, right? They have withdrawals and they're like, no, like I physically can't give it up.
Yes.
So I would say those are probably like, because my mom was a smoker for since she was 16. I think she's 60, and she just put them down. So just from what I've seen, those would probably be the top things that I've seen.
That's exactly right. So you have the routine, you have the chemical dependency on nicotine, and you also have people in your life that enable the habit. And they may be smokers and they may not be, just like they may be a yeller or they may not be. So now let's take a look at that and what it looks like for the yelling habit. So with the yelling habit, you also have the chemical dependency on cortisol and adrenaline. And if you really think about it, even though you might hate yourself for losing your temper, after you lose it, you do get a kind of release.
Right.
There is a part of you that feels, whew, okay, maybe you felt really powerful while you were yelling. So part of this is this chemical habit that your body has known probably since childhood. And it's going to take professionals to help you break that habit. Professionals who have done it themselves or professionals who don't have that habit. You can also hire professionals to help you, like massage therapists, physical therapists, cranial sacral therapists. They can teach your body by touching it how to release that stress response. Okay, so then there's the routine. That's something that can be really helpful, is you can write down times of day, times of the month. A lot of us women, we tend to lose our temper and get stressed out right at PMS time.
It's so funny because I don't think any of us think we're in a routine of yelling. Like how can we be in a routine of yelling? Like it's not like smoking, but it's so funny that you say that because there probably is a pattern and you're not even seeing it.
That's right. Yeah. So for me, the key to breaking this habit is just raising your awareness about it. So yes, discovering the routine. Maybe you always lose your temper on Christmas. So write it down, think about it, and then open your mind to the possibility that you can change the routine. And then the last part is also actually kind of part of the routine, and it's about the people in your life who support the habit. So for example, let's say you're a mom and you tend to get stressed out in the mornings when you're getting your kids ready for school. Very, very common. I used to do it too. When you first start breaking the habit, your buttons are going to be pushed more than ever because they're in the habit too. Even though they're not necessarily the ones who yell, they get the stress response. They get that hit of cortisol and adrenaline. And so they will push you. And what I want to say in that one moment when you feel the pushback, instead of being discouraged by it, be encouraged, because it's a sign that you're doing really well. And you can even say something like, I'm feeling pushed back into my yelling habit and I'm trying to break that habit in my life.
I love that. You said something right there in the beginning and it brought up a thought and I forgot what it was.
It's okay. It was about in
the morning.
Yes.
And so something that I think it's easy to, so changing up your routine is like even just packing lunches the night before it's just, so we look back at like, why are you stressed? Well, because I have to get ready. I got to get kids ready. I got to make breakfast. I got to make lunches and all these things. And so I feel like too, of just taking things off your plate, like maybe making breakfast. So it's just heat up and go, or packing lunches. Like I even found like that can definitely change the game of how stressful my mornings are.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So equating yelling and stress together is actually another piece of the awareness that the reason you're yelling is because you're stressed out, mama. You
Yeah.
know, and a lot of us, I know for myself, I was taught to be really strong and that I should be able to do everything and not complain and work really hard and not rely on other people and get everything done. And you can just hear how stressful that is, right? So, yeah, so part of this process was me learning to let things go, that I could let go, to say, hey, I need help. I mean, I cannot tell you, back when I was a yeller, being able to identify when I needed help and to be able to say I need help was probably one of my biggest life lessons that I hadn't learned.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So give us some actionable steps that helps moms break out of that cycle. And what can we do to stay cool with our kids and ourselves? Because I think at the end of the day, I think once we break out of that cycle, I think we'd be really proud of ourselves and also just proud of like our kids will be proud of us too, because I know just from the receiver end, that's not pleasant either. And so I don't want to be known as like the yeller, or I don't want my kids to be afraid of doing something because I'm going to yell at them. So I would love to hear some actual steps that you take, maybe in the moment too. So things you can do just to make sure that that's not going to happen, preventing it, but also like when you're in the moment and you want to yell.
Yes, absolutely. And I have mentioned a couple of things, like you can say, first of all, you got to become aware of your buttons. What do your stress buttons feel like? A lot of people will feel pressure on their chest. They'll feel tightness in their jaw or their neck or shoulders. Sometimes they feel tightness in their butt or thighs, which makes sense because it's the fight or flight response. And you want to part of your body wants to run out of there. So your legs start tensing up. So if you can become aware of what your body is doing and feel your body. So you feel that jaw tensing up. And it's basically, you're really slowing this one moment in time down into slow motion, because generally when you're yelling, everything's speeding up. But you want to slow it down, feel whatever is going on in your body, and you can say, I'm feeling pushed back into my old habit of yelling, and I don't want to do that anymore. And you're saying that for yourself, really. You're not making your children or your husband responsible. You're saying it to help bring up your awareness. And I'm going to give you a really simple physical exercise you can do to help release, to activate you have two parts of your nervous system, one that activates the stress, and then you also have one that activates the calm. And one good news piece about the calm is that just like stress is contagious, calm is also contagious. So if you can notice what's going on in your body and that stress is coming up, and bring it down and bring the calm into the situation, it's going to help your whole family.
Nice.
So what you're going to do is basically like a yawn breath. You're going to breathe in quickly and out with a long breath. And you can also, while you're doing that, lift your shoulders and then put them down as you breathe out. You really want to be aware of the tongue, because when you're stressed out, your tongue is often pressing up against the top of your mouth. So you want to release the tongue, and you can even sort of open your mouth a little bit, and that also releases the jaw, which is good. And then at the end of doing that, so let's equate, this will help us remember it more easily. A yawn is a natural way to release stress from your body physically. So you can use yawns whenever you want.
Now I want to yawn. Did I start thinking about it, I'm like, I gotta yawn.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's good, right? Yeah, see, so calm is contagious. Just talking about the yawn is contagious, which is good news,
Yes.
right? Um, Something else, if you have a dog or a cat, something that they do naturally to release the stress response from their body, other than yawning, because they do yawn,
They do.
they go, ah, like that. And when they're doing that, guess what? They're activating little nerves on their face and in their neck that is helping to release the stress response from the body.
Because if you think about it, I've never seen a mad person or an actively stressed mad person ever yawn. I've never seen that.
Yeah, it's so true. The other thing that we get to watch our dogs and cats do is they shake themselves from head to toe. They do this thing with their body. And so you can do that in a big or a small way. And one of the ways I talk about it is I just say, give your head a little jiggle. And what you're doing is you're loosening those neck muscles. And there's also a big nerve back there called the vagus nerve. And you're just sort of telling that vagus nerve, chill out, dude. It's okay. So I'm going to say the steps again, and then we'll do it maybe 3 times. So it's a quick in, long out with the shoulders up and then down. And then at the end, we'll just give our heads a little jiggle. Okay. So if you're listening to this, let's do it together. Quick in, long out, and then give your head a little jiggle. There you go. And anything else that's tense? Sure. Anything else that feels good? Shake it out. Feel your butt muscles, relax them. All right, let's do it again. Here we go. Quick in. Release the tongue. Long out. Give your head a little jiggle. Whew, and anything else. Even sighing, the sighing actually helps. All right, one last time. Quick in.
Yeah, yawn.
It's all good. Yawning's great. This is a good thing. Quick in, long out. Yeah, all of that, right? Can you feel the difference?
Yes.
Yeah, a lot of times I will feel sort of a tingling up and down my body or my spine. Remember how I talked about what stress feels like in the body? Now, yeah, it's good. It feels like, oh, I can breathe now, and feel this. So now that you're noticing what stress feels like, you're going to start developing your new habit. So your new habits feel like being able to breathe, feeling that tingling sensation up and down your body. A lot of times the emotions, we describe it as freedom, happiness, calm, peace, joy. And when you feel those things, take a moment, again, really slow this down and celebrate it. You want to develop this new habit in your body of, oh, okay, this is what the new me is. This is what I'm working for in my life.
Nice. Where can we find you? Like, how do people, if they're interested in working with you, different resources you offer, we'd love to hear it.
Yeah, great. So right now, what my business looks like is, first of all, I have a website with a blog with tons of useful information, including a poem called I Used to Be a Yeller.
Nice.
Yeah, and another one called A Love Letter to Anger. And that's tempercoaching.com. And I coach people one-on-one like this via video call online. And I also give talks. I give talks online to groups like this. And I also give local talks in Austin. And if you want me to fly out to your group, I can do that too and give talks. Oh, and I also actually train counselors on, because not all counselors are self-regulated yet. Some of them are like us. They're moms who lose their temper, dads who lose their temper. So I train counselors on how to be self-regulated and how to help clients. And I also have this referral network of counselors that I do that with. Oh, and if you are a coach or a healer and you want to find your niche, like I found Moms Who Lose Their Temper, I can coach you in that and how to be a collaborator and really a mature leader to make the world a better place. And that's what it looks like right now.
Nice. Thank you so much for coming on today. I appreciate all the knowledge that you've shared with us.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.